Hi, I'm Louise, and today I'm going to be talking about Wake Up Dead Man. This is the third of the Knives Out films, and it's of course similar to those. We have Benoit Blanc solving a mystery, and this is the same. I mean, it's in a different setting with different characters like the others, and it's not attached to them at all, other than Benoit Blanc is in them. I think they're all pretty fun, and this one is included in that. This might be my favorite in the series so far. I really loved the first one when it came out. The second one is really fun too. It was definitely a big departure in terms of like setting, I guess. This feels a little bit more of a return to the first one, but this one I think is the least cynical of the three and also more of a character study than the other two. And I really love that. I feel like we get enough cynicism these days that I love something that's a little more earnest. And so I really enjoyed that a lot. And, the story is more or less the same as the others. So, you have a murder that occurs in the film, and then Benoit Blanc comes into town. He starts working with someone who says they're not the suspect, but at certain points in the story seems like they might be or could have been. And then they solve the mystery more or less together. I think this is my favorite looking of the three. The main place they're spending a lot of the story is in a church. And there's stained glass everywhere. It's just shot really beautifully. I love the way that Rian Johnson has been using light in this one to communicate what people are thinking. I also think Steve Yedlin deserves a shout out here, the cinematographer. And I guess they've been working together since 2005, so I'm glad that they're still loving working together because they're doing great stuff. And I just love how much they use the stained glass. There's a bit of it in Judd's room as well as just throughout the church. There's a lot of intentional lighting going on, and it sounds so basic, but I feel like so many films now, they're like, oh, we'll just film it as almost decisionless as possible, if that makes sense, so that they can make changes in post-production. But all of these lighting choices have to be intentional, caught in camera, or else they wouldn't look good, and they just wouldn't have committed to something. And I love that they did. I thought this movie was hilarious. All of these are really funny. Our theater was very empty. Maybe we went on a weird day. I don't know. It was just my husband and I and an older couple, and we were laughing, my husband and I, and we're having a great time. But I remember them laughing maybe one time. But I would recommend watching this with people who have the same sense of humor as you because it is very funny. Yeah, the beginning especially is really funny. And, I know that Benoit Blanc is often cited as the star, but Josh O'Connor as Reverend Judd is just incredible. He is a huge reason, and his story is a huge reason why I love this movie. He plays Reverend Judd with an incredible delicateness that I think would be really hard with a character like this. He's very earnest and could easily come off as sort of pretentious and fake, but he lends a groundedness to him that makes his character totally believable. His scenes are also the ones that manage to make me cry in this film. I've never cried in a Knives Out movie before. Like, I can't even think of a scene where that could potentially happen. Like, none of it is emotional enough in that way. I'll talk more in specifics about what I'm talking about in my spoiler section later, but it's just kind of funny seeing this after just having seen Challengers last year, where he plays such a jerk. So anyway, acting is amazing. You can play whatever if you're good at it. And this isn't to say Daniel Craig is not great. He is always great. I still think the second one is his funniest. This one is interesting because you kind of see him come up against religion as a non-religious person. And I'll talk more about that later too, but I think it's interesting seeing him kind of navigate that along with the crime as well. I also really love Josh Brolin as Monsignor Jefferson Wicks. He was in the movie a lot more than I was expecting as the person who gets killed. And we get a lot of backstory between him and Reverend Judd that I think makes it way more interesting Because I think the others, we kind of learn about the relationship between everyone as the story goes on. But I liked having the background already communicated to us after the murder happens, and then we kind of just move on to solving the murder rather than getting into all the relationships, if that makes sense. That's kind of shifted a little bit. I will say the ensemble is a less big part of the story here. I think in the others they play a much larger role, but in this one it's more just Benoit Blanc and Reverend Judd. And I think that really works. And I do want to talk about some specific people, but I don't want to give anything away. So again, that will be in my spoiler section. I will say, though, it was fun to see Jeremy Renner again. I know he had a serious accident relatively recently, so it was really fun to see him. I was like, oh, he's doing better. Yay. I'm glad he's here. And now I'm going to move into my spoiler section because this is a murder mystery. A lot of my review was going to be in here. I just figure I don't want to spoil anything. Part of the fun of watching a murder mystery is trying to figure out who did it and all that stuff. So I will be talking about that. So if you want to skip that, jump to here. Or, go watch the movie, come back. I do think this movie is very worth watching. I honestly could recommend this to basically anyone. It's very fun. I don't know. I had a great time, but if you don't care and haven't seen it, just come along. Okay, so now that it's just us, the people who have seen the movie or don't care about getting the movie spoiled, I do want to start with my only criticism of the movie, and then I'll move into the things that I really loved. First, I do think the ending was a bit rushed, and I understand emotionally why this happened this way, because there's a lot of stuff happening emotionally for Reverend Judd and for Glenn Close's character here, but the solving of the mystery, I was like, whoa, I can't even process what's happening. And maybe that was just my viewing experience, but that was really the only negative I had in the film. I did enjoy, though, the emotions of what was happening and how we're watching Benoit Blanc go through what happened, and then he stops and is like, I need the culprit to tell us what happened, because I saw Reverend Judd do that, and it gave him this, release. And because of who these people are and their religious nature, it's better if they confess it rather than me telling everyone what happened. And I really enjoyed that. And that whole sequence was really cool, and how they used the sun to communicate him thinking about that. I really loved that. I did feel like it was a little bit rushed. And I wonder if I rewatch the scene, if I'll better understand how everything happened. But maybe I just was so taken aback by all the information that was being given to me all at the same time. I think my favorite scene in the entire film was the one with Louise, which was kind of funny. It's not often that I run into Louises in movies. I guess there's more than I'm thinking. I was already over the moon that there was a character who was listening to the Doobie Brothers. I love the Doobie Brothers. I love 70s music. And then when we learned her name is Louise, I was absolutely losing my mind. So I was already thrilled about this scene. And then she starts to get into oh, you're a reverend. Let me tell you about what I'm struggling with. And then he starts listening to her in the middle of their murder investigation. It really just shows how much Judd cares about ministering to people, and it got me really emotional. I was just so taken aback by this, that I love this moment that we're pausing in the murder mystery and giving Judd an opportunity to minister to someone else, which is really crazy that they took the time to do that. And I loved that they did that. So that made me cry. Because I was just like, wow, that's so sweet that he's taking to the time to do this. And he's, by the end of the call, you have my number if you need to call me. Also, as a person who grew up really religious and has since left that, it was really cool to see Rian Johnson walk this line of having believers in the movie and non-believers in the same movie, and have them both be taken seriously. Because I feel in a lot of media, depending on who it's made by, one or the other is made to seem kind of dumb, or at least like not seeing the full picture, whether it's the religious person or not. And I think it's really cool that Rian Johnson walks this line of like, yes, we have Reverend Judd, who's very earnest in his belief and wants to minister to people and wants to be in the clergy. And then we have Benoit Blanc, who is not religious at all and even gets invited to Judd's first service, and he turns him down, even though they're friends at this point. And he's like, you know what? I am not interested in that at all. But we can still be friends. You know, I just loved that he was able to walk that line and not make either group seem completely dumb and foolish. I mean, there are some characters who are foolish, but that has less to do, I think, with them being religious and more just because of who they are. Because we have Reverend Judd, who takes the religion seriously and is seen as completely earnest through the entire film. And I love that. I think that's a hard line to walk. But I'm really, really glad that they did that. I'm just remembering that we learn in this that Benoit Blanc can play the organ. I wish we saw him playing more of the organ. Like he's trying to get everyone to pay attention to him for a second. And so he plays the beginning of the Phantom of the Opera, you know, the da-da-da-da-da. I died. That was so funny. But yeah, I love it. He loves musical theater and also solves crimes. That's great. This is a side tangent here. I think it's funny that they made a Muppet version of Benoit Blanc, and like there's a clip somewhere of Daniel Craig reacting to Benoit Blanc being on Sesame Street and having a Muppet of himself, and he's like, oh, I would have loved to have been there. I think it would have been way funnier to have him play Benoit Blanc. Not that the Muppet's not great, it's fun, but can you imagine having him like talking to the Sesame Street guys and solving a mystery with them? Anyway, it's just funny that they were like, you know what, we're gonna have a puppet of him. Like, okay.
The only thing I'm doing is spitting feathers here that I'm not there actually doing it with them. Someone who grew up on Sesame Street, this is quite moving.
I am really curious to see where the series goes from here. I know that when Rian Johnson signed on with Netflix that it was just for 2 films. So I wonder if they'll continue the series. I think it'll depend on how well this one does on the streaming platform. I do think critically it's very successful. I mean, they all have been pretty well loved by everybody, so I think this will be no different. I wouldn't mind if they kept making more. I think they're really fun. I can tell that everyone on the shoot is having a great time. It seems like everybody loves being there, and Daniel Craig loves doing it, which is important because he's in all of them. But yeah, I don't even know where you would take it from here, but I guess I'm not writing the show, so it's not up to me. I was also thinking as I was leaving the theater after the movie was over, like, there's an alternative universe where The Last Jedi is universally beloved and Rian Johnson just makes Star Wars movies for the rest of his life. I'm really glad we don't live in that universe. Not that I wouldn't love to see more of his Star Wars. I did really like The Last Jedi, but I'm enjoying this Knives Out series quite a bit. And I hope they keep making them, but if they don't, we have these 3 and they're really fun. So those are my thoughts on Dead Men Walking. I really loved it. I think this was a good change for the series and taking it away from, I mean, it is still an ensemble film, but it's less of an ensemble film than the last few have been. And I think it's a good change. And if they continue in this direction, I wouldn't be mad. But I also think the ensemble bit of it is really fun. I think the character study was really cool. I'm curious to see where they go from here. And I hope that if they want to make more, they make more. And if not, that's okay too. We have some really great films here. And I'd love to hear what you think of it. I mean, it touched me more than I was expecting because I was like, oh, it'll just be a murder mystery like the other 2, but this one really touched me quite a bit. So thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear what you think. And if you don't end up watching it, I'd also love to hear why. I also think that's totally valid because sometimes you're like, nope, I'm not going to take the time to watch this. And that's totally fine. I appreciate you guys a lot. 2025 has been kind of funky, creative wise. But I think I've finally found a rhythm that sort of works for me in making videos and streaming and doing shorts. I feel like I've been able to be good at two at once, but not all three. And I'm hoping I can try and figure that out in 2026 and get better at that. But we'll see. I have a couple more videos for this year, and then I have some fun stuff planned for 2026. And it's award season now, so I'm really excited to be talking about what's doing well at the award seasons. I understand that people are like, they never pick the best movie. And while I think that's true, I also find it very interesting to see what Hollywood thinks of itself in the time that it's in. Because the movies that win awards are more reflective of the consciousness of the filmmaking industry as a whole at that time rather than like what's actually the best. And it's for me, it's way more interesting to look at it that way rather than like, well, they didn't pick my favorite movie. Of course, they may not have picked your favorite movie. But that doesn't mean there's not something we can learn from it. Anyway, I think award shows are just really interesting. So I am curious how the 2025 awards season is going to shake out. But I'll be doing my live reaction again to the Oscar nominees, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. And if you watched any of my videos this year, thank you so much. Y'all are the best.